Alright, so let's move on to the other tabs. Right now, all I'm seeing is these three. Maybe you're seeing more, and the reason for that is probably because if you click on this little plus sign over there, and I click show all modules, these are all the other modules that you can enable. They're, I would call it like behaviors, like you can add an additional behavior to it. So like if I click color over lifetime, then oh, I have this new behavior that lets me change the color over lifetime. They're pretty self-explanatory in general. There are some of them that I've never used because um, maybe they're made for way too specific cases. And yeah, I like to have them disabled by default so that you only see uh, whatever is activated. And whenever I want to add another module, I can simply click the plus sign and add it. And then it goes there automatically. And if I disable it, it stays there. But if I select something else and go back, then it's gone. So one of the very important modules is the emission module. This is where you control uh, the speed at which your particles spawn, or you can also give it some bursts. So right now I have a rate of 10, so for every second it spawns 10 particles. If I set it to something higher like 100, now we have a lot more. And I'm gonna explain what bursts are. If I set this to 0 and I go in here in burst and I click the plus sign, now at 0 time of the emitter it spawns 30 particles, and as you can see they all spawn at once. And I can click restart to see it quicker. But if I want to, like right now it loops every 5 seconds, but I could say every 1 second. So now it's happening faster. And I can change that number to 1. And like most other things, I can click that little arrow and say something between 1 and 30. So we just saw like only 3 particles. Yeah, 1, 3, and then yeah, it's always different every time. Always different, except um, I'm gonna explain something else about the main tab that I didn't actually, and it's the random seed over here, auto random seed. Um, Again, this is for something very specific. The random seed, sort of, if I could explain it, it's kind of like a number, a random number that the system checks, and it kind of tells it what is the randomness. Not sure if that's well explained, but I will just show it to you. It's gonna be more simple. So right now, every time I click restart, it gets a different random seed. But if I uncheck this and the random seed is 0, the randomness of the particle system is always gonna lead to the exact same result. As you can see, every time I click restart, I'm getting exactly the same behavior. But if I were to change that number to 1 and I click restart, see now it behaves differently. Well, it behaves differently, but still while following all the rules that are set up, meaning that the start speed has to be between 10 and 2, and the same for the emission, it has to be between 30 and 1. So, why was I explaining this exactly? I forgot, but it's good to know. Anyway, I'll set this back to auto random so that it's always different. So that was for the emission. You can add more bursts if you want. Uh, like right now, over here on the left side is where you say when that burst occurs. So our particle system lasts for 1 second. So I can input any number between 0 and 1 over here. So if I put 0.9, I am now getting a second burst. when the playback time reaches 0.9. And is there a limit to this? I think there used to be a hard limit of 4 bursts, but they must have removed that. Anyway, I'm gonna put this back to a value of 10, and I'm gonna set it to be looping again, so that we keep seeing a constant stream of particles. Alright, the shape. The shape controls the location at which your particles spawn, their starting position basically. Right now it's a cone. Oh yeah, it sets this, it controls where it spawns from, its initial location, but it also controls, it's also one way of controlling their direction. So when it's a cone, they can shoot at a certain angle. If I want, I can put the radius down to 0, and I can widen the angle to something like 60, so I get something like this. There are different shapes, so I can click this, I can set it as a sphere. Right now the radius is really small, but if I set it back to 1, this is the preview of our sphere. So there are a bunch of options are here. It's a very useful, one of the very most used modules. There are cases where I don't use it because I just want my particles to spawn from a point and I don't need to set their direction over here. So yeah, this controls the direction of the particles, and the start speed that you see over here is a speed that how can I explain this? Is the speed that corresponds with the shape. And I'm going to say it this way because there's a different module that can control the speed. So I'm just gonna disable shape for now. And as you can see, without a shape, it just goes in the z-axis. But I'm going to put a speed of 0 even, and I'm going to add the velocity over lifetime module. So I've got a bunch of options over here. The one I mostly use is the linear axis over there and the speed modifier. So if I want them to move up, I gotta go with the green axis, the y. So I can say 5. So as you can see, I don't have a shape, and I can still control where it's going. And I can also click that arrow at the end and say random between 2 constants. So now it's between 0 and 5, and if I want, I can give it the same behavior as a cone by saying like something like 0.2, 0.2, minus 0.2, minus 0.2. Or yeah, I guess that's too small. I'm gonna say 2, 2, minus 2, and minus 2. So I'm not using an actual cone, but I am still getting some variation in the speed. And as you can see, some of them are not going up at all. That's because I gave it a speed between 0 and 5, but I could put it up to 2. And now it does behave much more like a cone. So there is this velocity over here, and it's possible to have the velocity created by the shape at the same time. So right now there's no shape, but I can still add a speed over here. And as you saw before, without a speed, they were just going to the right in the z-axis. So as you can see, I can add like something like 2, and now it's moving everything towards the right. And if I give it a shape, maybe like let's go back to the cone. The cone was pointing that way. Well, right now what's happening is it's without the velocity, it's adding this velocity over here with the velocity over lifetime. They're added together, So it's one way of doing the effects. I usually just try to stick to one or the other, but there are some cases where sometimes you would want to use a combination of both. But anyway, I'm just saying it's there, it exists. That's a way of doing things. Uh, then there is force over lifetime. This is different from velocity because it kind of multiplies the force over the lifetime of the particle. So instead of being a linear speed in one direction, you can make it accelerate actually. That's yeah, acceleration, that's a better term. So if I put something like 5 over here, as you can see they sort of curve up and at one point they go really fast. It's kind of like gravity, you could put it to -5. Now they're sort of falling down. So it's very useful. It's a good way to mimic some behaviors of stuff in the real world. Force does that, but something else also does it in the main tab, and it's the gravity modifier. Does exactly the same thing, but the gravity is always in the y-axis. So actually, like a positive number over here is kind of giving it is the same as giving it a negative y value in the force. And something I forgot to explain is it's gonna be easier to explain with the force actually is you can change the space over here as well to something like world or local. So what this means is if I'm in local right now, actually it's gonna be easier to explain with the velocity. Sorry, just changed my mind. I'm gonna put 0 over there, and right now, why are they going down? Start speed. Oh, they still have some gravity. All right, so I'm gonna go in velocity, and I'm just gonna use a straight line. I'm gonna set it to a constant, 0, 0, 5. All right. So right now, they're going by a speed of 5 in the y-axis. And if I rotate this particle system, they go in the new y. But if I were to change this from local to world, they're always going to the y direction in world space. And a good way to preview and know where they would actually be going is to just look at this gizmo over here, and that tells you where they are going. Like if I put a value in x, they're gonna go obviously towards the red arrow. I could give it a rotation, but it's in world space, so it's still going there. But now x is pointing that way locally, so if I set it to local, now they're going that way.